Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for another installment of pre-concert talks with our lecturer in residence, Magdalena Bajewska, live from New York City. And this afternoon, we are discussing a very interesting and titillating program called Angels and Demons. Just like the book and the movie, if you have happened to read it or watched it. And it represents the polar opposites of human spirituality. And we have two concerts for you to enjoy it on March 26th at 3 p.m. and March 27th at 7:30 at Artis, Naples, with the great pianist Andrew Van Oeyen, who is a Warner Records artist. And now, please welcome Magdalena Bajewska.
Thank you, Konstantin, and thank you all for being here. It's always such a joy. I am told that we will be very lucky later this afternoon to get a visit from Andrew himself, and that will be a thrill. We'll get to ask him a few questions. I know that he will only be able to join us for a few minutes. In the meantime, let me share my screen and we can begin. And then Konstantin, I hope you will just maybe interrupt me if you see Andrew enter the room. Here we go. Okay, so as Konstantin mentioned, there are two concerts at Artis Naples, the afternoon and the evening one, March 26th, March 27, by Andrew Van Oeyen, a wonderfully varied program, yet connected with this common thread of transcendent emotions and how they are translated onto the keyboard. And Andrew himself writes, "For angels and demons, I have brought together works of divine and demonic inspiration in keyboard, orchestral, operatic, and choral music spanning 3 centuries. It's a journey into the darkest corners of human emotion, but also towards rapture and catharsis, confronting and contemplating the powerful forces that dwell above, below, among, and within us." It's so beautifully said. The program, let's see, are you, oh, Andrew is ready, excellent. Let's invite him in. I'm going to stop sharing so we can welcome him together. And admit. Andrew, can you hear us? Are you with us? Connecting. Fingers crossed. Okay, Andrew. Oh, yes, excellent. You are with us. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And you are muted still.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Perfectly. We're so glad. This only happened once before when we had Clayton Stevenson join us for the pre-concert talk. We know that you're incredibly busy and you only have 10 minutes to spend with us. You are muted, Andrew. Oh, there you are.
There we go.
Yes, so I hear that you're in Dallas and that you are.
Yes, and the only reason I have a flight to get to, but it's totally fine. The 10-15 minutes is fine.
Oh, fabulous. Well, since I just read the quote which you shared with us about the journey into the orchestral, operatic, choral, and keyboard music that relates to some of the darkest corners of our imagination and emotions. And we were all dying to know more. We know that you have released an album of the same title, Angels and Demons. It's a Warner album. How did that journey begin? How did you start assembling the repertoire? We'd love to know about your process.
So I had long wanted to build such a program about on the theme of heaven and hell, light and dark, saint and sinner, corporal spiritual, all of this I really wanted to do for a long time. I'd had it in the back of my mind for programming something like this in a concert setting. And I finally did it. And I played it in many places around the world. And I liked it so much that I decided to record it. I just thought, I believe in this program, at least in a concert setting. And I was hopeful it might translate on recording. So I made this recording called Angels and Demons, which is it's very similar to the one I'm going to play in Florida, but there's some extra pieces on it. You can make it a little longer because it's a recording. But it's a program that I think it really it's filled with all kinds of contrasts and works extremely well in a concert setting. It's my first concept recording. So I've never done this before. I've always just made recordings based on repertoire pairing, well, either single or several composers, but not 8 different composers. And
Exactly.
so
That's a different approach from that encyclopedic sort of all opus numbers of a certain
yeah.
composer. Yes. Well, we are thrilled. I'm unfortunately too far. I'm in New York City, but I look forward to hearing the album. Are there other, well, before I ask you about other concept programs that you may have in mind and you may have designed, I would love to know more, and I'm sure everybody here would love to know more about your approach to translating these emotions onto 88 keys of the piano. A lot of the pieces that you're going to play are transcriptions of operatic aria or organ works and so on. So how do you approach that with as a pianist?
Yeah, the repertoire really, as you pointed out, it's all over the place. I mean, some of this is piano music, like the most pianistic of all, like Liszt Mephisto Waltz. And then there's Bach, which, of course, they're playing one of the French suites, of course, not not written for the piano originally. Then the Bach Busoni Chorale, and then I'm playing orchestral work, which is the Bacchanal from Samson and Dalila. And then I'm doing the Fauré Requiem, which the last movement of it, which is a choral piece. So yeah, it's all over the place. Again, the music though is so strong that I think all of these pieces are so strong that their impact is able to be translated on many different instruments. I mean, or many contexts. You could hear it in an organ, you could hear it on the piano, you could hear it in an opera. And I think that the music itself is just so powerful that I try to in this program, I try to simply bring out all of these contrasts, even though the original pieces that I'm playing are basically written for enormous, either enormous groups of musicians or just single instrument. But I think it's all unified by these themes, and I think that all of these versions that I'm doing of them, including my own, I think they really do work on the piano.
I love that the bookends of your program are two composers who are famous for their deep religiousness, Johann Sebastian Bach and Olivier Messiaen, who both spent their lifetimes thinking about religion. We know that Messiaen himself said actually that he was not born into a religious family, but religion, he found religion very quickly and became an incredibly spiritual person. And I have some recordings to share with all of you later on. Among the pieces that you're playing is also a selection by Edward McDowell, which is a lesser known piece. We would love to know a little bit more about this, because this is something that one doesn't hear very often. How did you find it?
Absolutely not. In fact, I was not familiar with these two pieces. One is a movement from his first modern suite for piano, and another is a sort of little fantasy piece called Hexentanz, Witches' Dance. And so a little bit about McDowell. McDowell was an American composer living in the 19th century who was a contemporary of people like Franz Liszt, with whom he actually studied and who helped him get that first modern suite published. And so McDowell spent quite a bit of time in Europe, mostly Germany, though I think he did come to Paris too. And he sort of got the approval of some of these great masters in Europe, and then returned to the United States, to the East Coast, I believe Boston, and where he taught. And anyway, he's a very good composer. His pieces are absolutely not very well known. He did write a piano concerto, which is not a bad piece. But how did he find his way on this program? I think it was as I was doing research for works that, well, both heavenly and hellish works. I think in one of my searches, this first modern suite movement came up, which is based on a verse from Dante's Inferno, and it's just so incredibly dark. And so it's one of the things I love about my program is that there's so many ways to explore these themes. You don't just go through, it's not just about heaven and hell or angel and demon. It's about spirit, it's about flesh, it's about the tension of the two. It's about, it can be a literal thing or it can be a figurative thing. It can be a very serious thing or it can be a playful thing. So the piece of McDowell's from this first modern suite is a very dark, serious piece. And then by contrast, on my album is the Hexentanz, which is just a totally light, fluffy, virtuoso piano piece that evokes, I guess, witches flying, but it doesn't really. It could evoke many things, and it's a great little dessert encore kind of piece.
Mm-hmm. On a slightly different but related note, Edward McDowell was appointed a professor of music at Columbia University, and he was the first music professor to essentially establish the department of music and the orchestra, which is still active. And we know you are a graduate of both Columbia and the Juilliard School. Tell us about that combination and how your academic background has affected you as a musician.
So to be clear, I'm a graduate of the Juilliard School, but an alumnus of Columbia. So I had planned to attend both and do this dual degree program. I got into it, but I ultimately just decided to stay based at Juilliard, and then I took my liberal arts courses at Columbia. That's how it worked out.
Fabulous. I also, speaking of liberal arts, I love how the art on our walls is almost.
Oh, that's right.
Crazy.
I'm just noticing that now. You're right.
It could almost be
so similar.
Continuous painting. And before you have to rush off, I'm curious about some other ideas you may have for concept programs that tell a story, that take the listeners through kind of a trajectory. Have you done others, or are you planning to?
I have not, but I definitely am planning to. And I'll tell you one idea that just was presented to me, in fact, by a journalist in Florida who interviewed me for these upcoming recitals. She asked if I might do a part 2 to this program, Angels and Demons, almost a sequel, in the sense that there's so much repertoire out there that I wanted to include on this program that I could not for a recording or in a live concert. So I think I could make another one of these Angels and Demons recordings with fantastic repertoire, and I think it would be as a program equally successful. So that is something I'm considering doing. But other concept programs. Nothing. I've done a few of them. Nothing too recently too original. I mean, music and nature. I've done a few programs, and this is a very rich theme. But I don't make a habit of doing concept programs. But every now and then it's kind of fun to sort of veer off and do that. It's a little bit risky too, though, because it's like giving people a tasting menu. You know, there's so much different repertoire on such a program, and you have to switch gears quickly as the performer. And I think for the listener, you know, it certainly it's captivating, but it's, you know, it serves a nice purpose sometimes, but at the same time, I also love just giving a program with, you know, one single 30-minute work on a half, where you have longer time to tell a story.
We certainly hope that the sequel is coming up to your album. I like to think of these concept programs as maybe a curated exhibit where you know, you may see a well-known work or two in a totally different context, right? And when they're curated in a certain way, you make different connections with works that may have otherwise been familiar and maybe somewhat, you know, kind of swept under the carpet in the way that, you know, we know them so well and we think that we've heard every note. What would be the purpose of listening to them again? But then in that different context, they take on a whole different life.
Absolutely, they really do. This is something that I love about the recital setting, how you can make these kinds of connections, and they do. You know, just listening to these pieces alone on Spotify or whatever, you're not going to you would never think about those connections until you see it paired. And it also can affect the way you play the pieces in the program. I think depending on you know, when I play this little piece of MacDowell, and then I come out of it and I go right into the Liszt Mephisto waltz, it somehow gives the Mephisto a certain energy that and likewise the Bacchanal and the Meditation of Thais, they make a really great pair, and in terms of not just the thematic element, but the tonality as well. And this is the part I love about making programs, and in the way that you make those connections between those pieces, not only just in how it appears on paper, but in how you actually perform it and present it to the listener.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, I know I keep promising to let you go, but this is really the last question. The Fifth French Suite by Bach. I was very interested to see it on this program in this context, because it is a dance suite, right? So
it's not one of his most religious works. No.
Exactly. On the surface, it doesn't have a lot of spirituality, but as I mentioned before, Bach does, right? And
right.
And I think it would be wonderful to hear it in the context of the Bach Busoni choral prelude, right?
That's exactly it. So if the connection there, of course, is in tonality. The Bach Busoni is G minor work that ends on the Picardy third, and then it sort of leads seamlessly into this kind of angelic Allemande, the first movement of the French suite. And then, if I don't know. I wouldn't make such a comment if I were just performing this piece on a program with just other Bach French suites. But on this program, the last movement, several of the movements, particularly the last movement, kind of evokes or could evoke this image of dancing angels.
I love that you just said that, because I literally had prepared my notes thinking about both the courante and the live as these very kind of celestial light beings, right? Angelic, or, you know, seraphims, little cherubs, literally flying. And we know that elsewhere in his music, in his cantatas, or in his passions, Bach does write this kind of music, right? Especially in that key of G major, very bright, very positive, right?
It's a celestial key.
Yeah,
it is.
Yes, of course, the Goldberg variations are also in this key, and boy, have they taken us to a very spiritual sphere, having nothing to do with religious music, right?
Right, exactly. That's the magic of Bach.
Well, I could never have enough of talking about Bach, but I know you have to run off to the airport, so we wish you safe travels,
Thank
and
you.
can't wait to hear your concert.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for coming. Everybody stay with me. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. That was so lovely. There's nothing like having that personal interaction with the artist, and usually you get to meet the artist after the performance, but having this treat of a conversation beforehand really is fantastic and very lucky. So Andrew has mentioned his very, very extensive program. And yes, as you know me by now, I will never have enough of talking about Johann Sebastian Bach. So let's set up the mood. We won't have time to talk about every single piece on the program, but I think that this conversation was so worth taking the time. You're going to remember it as you listen. So the choral prelude, Nun komm der Heiden Heiland, actually started as a chant, meaning it was just one single melody unaccompanied. And the translation of Nun komm der Heiden Heiland is Savior of the nations, come. The text was added later by Martin Luther himself, and Bach wrote that tune into his cantata 61 under that same title, Savior of the Nations Come. And what he does is just remarkable. He is dressing that melody, and you only hear the first few seconds. He's dressing that melody in what's called a French overture, which is music that would be used to greet King Louis XIV himself, and his arrival would be announced with that kind of music, full of ta-da. You will hear all those ta-da. They're called dotted rhythms, in the musical terminology. And so, how wonderfully imaginative Bach is to welcome the king in the French kingly fashion, the royal fashion. But of course, in this case, the king is Jesus himself. Let's just hear that. Okay, so you heard a lot of that ta-da, kind of pomp and circumstance with that very modest chant, Nun kommt der Heiden Heiland. And so now we are eliminating the royal ta-da music, and we are moving on to the transcription of Busoni, Ferruccio Busoni, who we discussed many times before in our pre-concert talks. And this is maybe one of my favorite interpretations here of that chorale by Vladimir Horowitz. And you still have that melody fresh in your ear, and you will hear it right away. So here we are in that serious key, a rather dark key of G minor. So remember where we are tonal. That's exactly what Andrew was talking about. I have to exit to go to the next slide. Here we were in G minor, and then we moved to G major, which is still a G, but a much brighter, much more kind of a heavenly key. And what I want to mention are two movements of this dance suite. As we were just talking with Andrew, this is not sacred music, but under Bach's pen, I suppose everything sounds just so divine. And so I want to bring two selections to your attention. The Saraband, which is a courtly dance. And again, I have talked so much about the Saraband in the past, but in this context, it sounds so much more maybe pious and almost religious. And then we will go kind of backwards to the courante, which in fact precedes it in live performance. But I want you to hear that contrast between the seriousness of the saraband and the courante, in which little cherubs, little angels seem to take flight. So I will play both of them in a sequence. Here's the saraband first. So yes, a very, very interesting choice by Andrew to put this secular, otherwise, piece in the context of this highly spiritual program. Now, we move on to the music of Jules Massenet, and it's just very, very loaded kind of stuff. I don't know if I have it in the proper order here on the program, but you're going to hear Andrew's own transcription of the meditation, the meditation from the opera Thais. And the meditation is exists in the version as a piece for violin and orchestra. And it happens unexpectedly in the middle of an opera about this highly seductive, gorgeous courtesan, Thais, who is being convinced by a monk to come closer to God and leave her sinful ways. And so the opera is highly moving. There's also a lot of exoticism in it, but that's for a different pre-concert talk. I want you to hear the concertmaster of the Metropolitan Opera here play this piece, and I don't think that in the audience there was one dry eye after he was finished with us. I was actually there. It's 2017. This is the wonderful David Chan of the Metropolitan Opera. It is really quite shocking to actually hear this purely instrumental piece in the midst of all this vocal music and all those interweaving textures. The meditation motif, the melody, comes back in the very last scene of the opera, and I want to play it for you because it has so much to do with the theme of the program, which is, sin, spirituality, forgiveness, looking for goodness, memento mori, as Thais is contemplating her beauty and how it will one day pass, she in fact does come closer to God and joins a convent. And here is the last scene where the monk Athanael, who decides to take her away from the convent, having had a dream of her death, he finds her, but it is already too late. She has found her spirituality. She has, in fact, become so pure after 3 months of penance that she has already been she's already been called a saint by the nuns in the convent. Unfortunately, as is the case with so many romantic operas, she does not live, and this is the scene. So keep that tune in mind. Beautiful Renee Fleming with her gorgeous, creamy voice. As you gathered from this scene, Athanael is also deeply in love with Thais, and his feelings toward her are actually quite erotic as well. So there is also that aspect at play. So now you have this divine melody weaving through, kind of slipping in and out of our attention, of our focus, and sort of existing in and out of polyphony with the main characters. And now, how do you translate all of that beauty onto the piano? Well, Andrew did that by creating his own transcription of the Meditation. So let's take a quick listen. Just the same amount of music, the first big phrase. so on. It's a beautiful Warner Classics recording, which in its own way is visually is just so pleasing and almost spiritual in its own way, with a divine view of the Sacré-Cœur in Paris and the sun, direct sun coming right through the window. What more could one wish for? We're going to move to a slightly different realm here with the Mephisto Waltz. I think many of you are familiar with it as an incredibly virtuosic work, and we have talked about the concept of the virtuoso a few weeks back. But maybe not all of you know that the Mephisto Waltz No. 1 by Franz Liszt actually originated as an orchestral work, and it was called Der Tanz in der Dorfschenke, the dance in the village inn. And that's exactly what you're going to hear at the very beginning, this kind of rugged, almost village music with open strings of the violin, meaning that the left hand is not involved in shortening the string, and it is almost a literal portrayal of the text of Faust, not by Goethe, but by Nicolas Lenau, from whom Liszt takes the text. It's from an 1836 drama. The waltz, the Mephisto Waltz, is written roughly 25 years later, 23 years later. And let me just read that to you. There's a wedding feast in progress in the village inn with music, dancing, carousing. Mephistopheles and Faust pass by, and Mephistopheles induces Faust to enter and take part in the festivities. Mephistopheles snatches the fiddle from the hands of a lethargic fiddler, and you're going to hear that very much in these kind of squeaky motifs at the beginning, and draws from it indescribably seductive and intoxicating strains. What I'm reading to you actually appears in the printed edition of the Mephisto Waltz. Now, the amorous Faust whirls about with a full-blooded village beauty in a wild dance. They waltz in a mad abandon out of the room into the open, away into the woods, and that's where the music sort of diminishes in volume, in texture, and that's where you're going to have a much more, very contrasting theme that is much more romantic and lyrical, I could say. Yes, so we are going to hear just again maybe the first minute in the orchestral version, followed by the fabulous Yun Chan Lim playing the same music on the piano. So you really hear this musical depiction here of the wedding feast in progress and the village music and dancing and carousing, as Lenau describes in his drama. This piece, of course, is a favorite of pianists. It's such a wonderful way to really showcase your technique, your emotional capabilities, and really tell a story of a man who is making a deal with the devil. And speaking of devil and hellish themes, I want to find the slide of, yes, the MacDowell, and we have Andrew's own recording here again. So this Rhapsody is from MacDowell's first modern suite, as he called it, from 1883, the very one that, as Andrew mentioned, Franz Liszt himself helped MacDowell publish. MacDowell was born a New Yorker, went to study in the Paris Conservatory, and then in Frankfurt, Germany, and it is in Germany that he meets Franz Liszt. And this piece is, as I mentioned before, a lesser known, but a very interesting and a very fitting choice for this program. The title is In ritmo tenebrae, in dark rhythm, or the rhythm of darkness, and the subtitle reads Lasciate ogni speranza voi che entrate, which translates into abandon all hope, ye who enter here. And many of you may be familiar with this quote. It is an inscription on the gate of hell through which Dante passes in his Divine Comedy from 1321. Okay, so the inspiration of this 14th century work is very long lasting. And here is this extremely dark piece, which Andrew says he so much enjoys sharing with the audience. Let's listen to a little bit of it. I'm going to stop here in the interest of time, but as you can hear, the piano here becomes this tolling bell, and we are in the lowest register of the piano, all the way to the left of the keyboard, where the deepest kind of lowest sounds are made, and you can hear the wonderful vibration, the kind of resonance that the piano creates. An atmosphere is very much like this image here, full of smoke, full of mist and fog, very mysterious kind of a place. I mean, how else are you going to describe the gates of hell on the keyboard? So I do hope that you allow your imagination wander in this concert, because it's a fascinating subject. I hesitate to share with you the Saint-Saëns Bacchanal, because I do want to get to the music of Messiaen. It's not the easiest music to hear, and that's why I want to spend a couple of minutes on it. But just to tell you very quickly about the Bacchanal from Samson and Delilah, again, a work based on an opera, which in turn is based on a biblical tale of Samson and Delilah. Delilah famously cuts off the hair of Samson, which is the source of his strength. And that Bacchanal is this crazy dance of priests following the blinding, the capture of Samson. So, but what I do want to talk about for the couple of minutes that we have left is the music of Olivier Messiaen. So a composer, one of the greatest composers of the 20th century, French, and as I mentioned before, a very, very deeply religious man. Very luckily, he was married to a pianist who was a true champion, not only of his works, but of many, many works of the 20th century. Her name was Yvonne Loriot. And here is a piece that Messiaen writes. It's a 20 movement piece. You're only going to hear the last movement. That is titled 20 regards sur l'enfant Jésus, 20 gazes on the infant Jesus. And this 20th movement here is called Le Regard de l'Église d'Amour, the gaze of the Church of Love. And you can hear the sort of the philosopher almost thinking about the mystery of religion, of faith, creating sounds that are very characteristic of his language. He has his own language that we have no time for to explain in great detail, but he creates his own scales upon which the music is built. And although you will hear plenty of dissonance, music that may be a bit hard on the ear, there is this overwhelming sense of religious mystery to the music of Messiaen. He also uses descriptions inside the score for the performer so that the message is very clear. For example, I will just play an example that is late. This is the 13th movement, and I just want to show you the first page. Not this, where you are going to hear the bells, which Messiaen very carefully describes in the score. So let's just hear this. I should also mention, because at the end of the 20th movement that you're going to hear as the conclusion of the recital, you will hear things, sounds that may be reminiscent of bird song. And I should also mention that Messiaen was fascinated by bird song and tried, and in fact succeeded, in writing bird songs with the very specific rhythms and melodies that birds make onto the piano, composing the catalog of birds. We have no time to discuss it today, but here is the 20th movement of the 20 gazes on infant Jesus. Let's hear it. And do I have the correct? Oh, no. Here, I'll play you the recording, and you see the portrait here of his wife, Yvonne Loriot, who passed not that long ago. And I still have friends who were lucky enough to study with her in Paris. Thank you, Konstantin. That what you just heard, where I just stopped, and it's so difficult to stop after just 30 seconds of music, that kind of incantation, these very repeated chords that have this profound effect on the listener. They grow and grow throughout this nearly 15-minute movement, and you're going to hear them again and again. And one just has to sort of give up the idea of a traditional perception of time. I think what Messiaen does, he transports us with this music to a different realm, a realm of spirituality, rhythm of heavenly bodies that are not born, that are never sick, that can travel at any speed. There's a beautiful documentary on Messiaen. I think it's called Music of Faith on YouTube, and it's available. If you have time, definitely watch it, because the man was fascinating, the way he perceived the world, the way he heard the sounds around him. These chords to him had colors, and he was able to with great detail describe how each chord that he writes, what combination of colors he heard. He talks about the whiteness of snow and the light of the sun, and all in the context of glory of God. So you will be making that journey with Andrew along from music of J.S. Bach to this heavenly gaze upon infant Jesus in the last as a last position on the program. So I am thrilled for you to be taken on that journey on March 26th and 27th. Before that, don't forget that you're going to hear Milana in just 2 days. So I hope you have your calendars marked and tickets in your wallets.
Thank you, Magdalena. Yes, and fantastic, Melissa. Good job. We're looking forward to you. Well, thanks so much for fantastic lecture. And yes, I do invite all of you on March 6th. Pavel Haas Quartet have landed in Miami successfully. So they are in Florida. So be sure to come and join us at 3 o'clock and 7:30 p.m.
Excellent. I think we have a couple of minutes. If anybody has something that they would like to ask or add, now would be the time.
If you guys want, I will share with you one last thing. Since if there are no questions, let me just play this for you, because it really shows what kind of a man Messiaen was. I want to show you this moment where his wife records a piece called Noel, Christmas, and very serendipitously, the bells start tolling in the church where she is recording it. And this is Messiaen himself. And just look at how he listens to those bells as a continuation of the piece in which bells are featured. And that will be the last thing we do today. I think it's so worth watching.
Dieu qui te repose.
What she says at the end is God himself who is responding to you. Isn't that just so, so beautiful? So with that, I leave you and I wish you beautiful, beautiful concerts coming up. And I hope to hear all about your impressions when we next see each other.
Thank you all very much for joining. I think Isabel wants to actually say something, please. Yes, I just asked you to unmute. I saw a raised hand there.
Thank you. That was a mistake, but thank you at all.
Of
So
course.
glad you could be with us. Thank you all so much again, and enjoy the sun and enjoy the music.
And let's be transported to the realm of divine and demonic on March 26th at 3 p.m. and March 27th at 7:30 at Artis, Naples with Andrew Van Oeyen. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Magdalena.
Bye bye, Melissa. Bye, everyone.